Football is the best sport on earth and perhaps the UK's biggest gift to the world. Why then are those of us living in the UK legally forbidden from watching our own teams on TV on a Saturday afternoon? In this video, we break down the 3 p.m. blackout, the law that prevents Brits watching their own national sport. We look at its history, why it exists, whether it has any place in the modern game, and I reveal what we could do instead. Let's get into it. So just what is the 3 p.m. blackout? Well, as those of you who watched the previous video about the insane price of watching football in the UK will know, the 3 p.m. blackout has a moderately confusing definition, but in practice, it is very simple. The legalese is that in the UK, if 50% of the fixtures in the top two divisions, so for example, the Championship and Premier League, kick off at 3 o'clock, then no football can be shown on the TV in the UK between 2:45 and 5:15. In practice, this means that if the Premier League and Championship are both scheduled on a Saturday, then none of the matches that kick off at 3 o'clock can be shown on TV in the UK. And of course, for those unaware, 3 o'clock is by far the most common football kickoff time in the UK. There is years and years of history behind that kickoff time. So this means that most of the time, if you live in the UK, you cannot watch your own team on the TV. And that is the 3 p.m. blackout. So why on earth is this the case? Why can't Brits watch their own team at 3 o'clock? It doesn't happen in any other country. Well, to find out why, we need to take a little walk down a historical road and ask, why did it get introduced in the first place? The answer lies here, in the northern town of Burnley, home more recently to Dyche Ball, then confusingly Company Ball, and this season, I suspect, Relegation Ball. Burnley, back in the day, by which I mean the 1950s and 60s, were a very successful football club, under the chairmanship of a guy called Bob Lord. They won England's top division, what is now known as the Premier League, played in Europe as well, and apparently did so in a swashbuckling total football fashion, playing a 4-4-2 that was very new to English football at the time. While there is something delightful about the Burnley of the past introducing this new exciting 4-4-2 to English football, and then modern day Dyche Ball Burnley being one of the most 4-4-2 sides it is possible to imagine.
Okay, we're getting off topic here.
What's relevant for this video is not Burnley the football club, but their chairman during this successful period, Bob Lord. Bob Lord had some pretty strong views on things and wasn't shy of shouting them from the rooftops. He is described in The Guardian as a bluff, tell it as I see it Lancastrian, while other contemporaries described him as the Khrushchev of Burnley. Some of these views of Bob's seem to be genuinely abhorrent. For example, his comments after Manchester United tried to sign 2 Burnley players not long after the Munich air disaster. He said a mere 10 days after the crash, quote, "I am just sick and tired of the whole business. United may be in a jam, but if they think they're coming to Burnley to pick roses off the tree, they better have second thoughts. They'll just have to fight their way out of it. They went into this of their own accord." They went into this of their own accord. What a Outside of his staggering lack of empathy, he also had some pretty staunch views on the consumption of football in the UK. In particular, our old friend watching football on TV. Oh, and on the topic of watching football, please don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks. Lord thought that by allowing football to be on TV, it would hurt the attendances of football clubs because people would just stay at home and watch the football on TV instead. As a football chairman in a time where match-going fans paying for tickets was the primary income for a football club, you can see why he was so worried.
This is how I make my living.
Indeed, Lord was so anti-football on TV, he even banned Match of the Day and their TV cameras from visiting Burnley's Turf Moor ground for a full 5 years. He was so convinced of his point that he basically lobbied the Football League into submission, and we ended up with what is now known as the 3 o'clock blackout.
So that's how it happened.
So it is this man, a man with some clearly disgusting views, who is most responsible now for what we now call the 3 o'clock blackout. Now, obviously, this was a man wrong about many things, and for the avoidance of doubt, I think the 2 quotes I highlighted to you there are disgusting and reprehensible. But let's focus on his claim that football on TV would harm attendances at games. This is a claim many people make in the modern world. Many nice, normal people, might I add. Such that I think we can examine this claim in complete isolation from the bloke who seems to have first introduced it into English football. So now we have to ask, does the blackout work? Does it protect attendances? attendances? Well, actually, just before we answer that, let's first clarify something. There are some attendances that probably wouldn't be threatened without the blackout rule. Perhaps when this question was first floated, top division clubs' attendances might have been threatened by the TV, but the Premier League is such a behemoth that these days it's difficult to imagine clubs losing a significant amount of attendance if the 3 p.m. blackout disappeared. Ticket prices are so expensive at the moment relative to much of Europe, sorry Americans for your insane prices, and yet stadiums are frequently sold out or nearly sold out in the Premier League, with long waiting lists for some season tickets. Instead, I think the 3 p.m. blackout these days is largely aimed at protecting lower league clubs' attendances. This is partly because lower league clubs rely more on revenue from attendances than Premier League clubs do with their insane TV money. Instead, the idea of the 3 p.m. blackout is that if the Manchester derby is on at 3 p.m, are you really going to pay for the bus to go and watch your local team Cheltenham play Accrington Stanley in the rain for the right to finish 14th in League 2? Of course, diehard fans would go and see their local team in this scenario. That's not up for debate at all. The relevant question here is whether there are enough casual fans or literal fair weather fans who would prefer to sit inside in the warm and watch the Manchester derby instead. So with that said, we can ask once again, does the 3 p.m. blackout work? Does it protect attendances? Now, some of you will have an answer to this immediately. Some of you will say, yes, obviously it's vital, while others will say, no, it's outdated and pointless. Hell, even an advocate general of the European Court of Justice has weighed in to essentially slag off the 3 p.m. blackout before. Fortunately, this is a question genuine academic studies have now been conducted on. So we do actually have something close to approaching a firm answer on whether the 3 p.m. blackouts work. And that answer is yes. It turns out they do. A German study, where of course they do not have the 3 p.m. blackout rule, by Wohlraffen, Palowski and Deutscher, apologies for my pronunciation there, measured, amongst other things, attendance of German 4th Division games when they clash with Bundesliga games on TV. They found that, on average, if a German 4th Division team kicked off at 3:30 p.m, essentially Germany's equivalent of the 3 p.m. kickoff in the UK, and this game clashed with a Bundesliga game on TV at the same time, then that 4th Division's team's attendance would drop by an average of 18.9%. Now, this is just one study, and a study in Germany, not the UK, for obvious reasons. So I don't want to claim that the question is answered once and for all. However, that result kind of seems right, doesn't it? 18.9%, that's roughly 1 in 5 people who, if there's an interesting game on TV, would rather stay in and watch that than go out and watch their local team. 1 in 5 people who'd rather watch the Manchester derby rather than go watch Cheltenham versus Accrington Stanley. To me, that seems very, very plausible.
That sounds about right.
Does seem like maybe 1 in 5 fans would rather stay in. And if that's right, and again, this is a study that would suggest it is, that's a pretty significant revenue drop for these clubs. Many lower league clubs are struggling to make ends meet as it is. You read a new story every day about a club struggling, or a Phoenix club or administration. If you came along and said, actually, at all your home games, which are your largest source of income, you're now going to have 18.9% fewer people coming through the doors, I imagine you'd see a significant number of clubs plunge into financial difficulties. So yes, it does seem like the 3 p.m. blackout does work. It does protect attendances for lower league clubs. But of course, simply establishing that the 3 p.m. blackout does clearly help lower league clubs doesn't establish that we should keep the blackout in place. In order to do that, we need to answer 2 questions. 1, are the benefits of the 3 p.m. blackout worth the costs? And 2, is there anything better than the 3 p.m. blackout? The answer to the first question is, to me at least, pretty clear cut. Yes, the benefits of the 3 p.m. blackout are worth the costs. There are 2 primary costs of the 3 p.m. blackout. The first is that some extremely rich clubs of the Premier League are missing out on getting more TV money from having the 3 p.m. kickoffs on TV. But this is classic rich get richer stuff, so I'm not terribly bothered about that. The second cost of the 3 p.m. blackout is much more significant. This is that if you are not at the stadium of your team at 3 p.m, then in the UK, you legally cannot watch your own team play football. And there are plenty of reasons we might not be able to make it to the stadium. Maybe it's sold out. Maybe we live miles away. Or maybe we simply can't afford it. And so it is infuriating to be legally prevented from being able to watch our team on the TV by the 3 p.m. blackout. But is this cost significant enough to essentially condemn a decent number of lower league clubs to financial oblivion? To force a decent number of historic clubs, centers of their community with dedicated fans into administration, perhaps even to wipe them from existence completely? ultimately, because removing the blackout so we can watch our teams, and in doing so, removing roughly 20% of the attendance from lower league teams, would probably condemn a number of clubs to this fate. And as a consequence, as frustrating as I find the 3 p.m. blackout, I do not think removing it completely is the right thing to do. The costs of the blackout do not outweigh the benefits of keeping it.
Okay, not perfect, but the pros outweigh the cons.
Instead, why don't we try and answer our second question? Is there anything better than the 3 p.m. blackout? Well, I don't want to remove the blackout and then do nothing about it. That doesn't mean we can't find a solution that brings the benefits of the blackout without the costs, or certainly with fewer costs.
I'm playing both sides so that I always come out on top.
Looking around for alternatives, one is presented by the NFL in the US, thanks to the comments from the last video for that one. As I understand it, and Americans and NFL fans, please do let me know if I'm wrong, until about 10 years ago, in the NFL, they had local blackouts, where a game could only be shown on TV in the local area if the game in question had achieved a certain percentage of tickets sold, with the idea being that once there are definitely enough people paying for tickets, then it's safe to show it on TV. And this sounds like a great way to protect the revenue of a club if you're worried that people won't turn up to watch that specific club if it's already on TV. However, as we have seen, I think the worry with the 3 p.m. blackout is that people won't turn up to watch their local club if a bigger club is already on TV. So, to make this work for football in the UK, the rule would have to be something like no Premier League games on at 3 p.m. in your local area unless all the clubs within your area have sold a sufficient amount of tickets. And you can specify maybe what you think a sufficient amount of tickets would be. That's a nice idea, I think. But as you're no doubt already thinking, logistically, that's a very difficult idea. Think of the amount of clubs that are local to you that would need to be included here. The UK has such a deep football pyramid that the amount of clubs that would have to be included on this list of have they sold enough tickets would be absurd. Unworkably so. Logistically, I just don't think something like this can get off the ground. Also, can you imagine the arguments between rival fans? Imagine if you're a Sheffield Wednesday fan who can't watch Sheffield Wednesday on TV because one of the teams in your local area, your city rival Sheffield United, haven't sold enough tickets for their home game. God, there'd be riots every week. Instead, I think there's a better solution.
Well, we can do better than that.
One that is staring us in the face. Just give the lower league clubs some sodding money. The Premier League is awash with absurd amounts of money, far dwarfing that of other top leagues. If more of that money found its way down the pyramid in some form of solidarity payment, then we wouldn't have clubs sitting on a knife's edge, ready to go bankrupt the moment attendances drop. And what's more, for those of you already typing up essays saying, well, why should my club have to give money to other clubs? Abolishing the 3 p.m. blackout rule would provide the perfect new source of funds for these clubs. The perfect way to redistribute some of the immense funds in UK football. Sky TV paid £6.7 billion for the right to show 215 Premier League games on TV this season and for the next few seasons. That's roughly 57% of Premier League games a season, with TNT taking up roughly another 13% to take televised games to roughly 70% of the fixtures in the Premier League. If we remove the blackout rule, that's 30% of games now available to be bid for. All else equal, going off what Sky paid for that 57%, that new 30% would be worth roughly £3.5 billion. Math. Now, I'm sure I'm simplifying the economics of that deal considerably, and there would be competing factors that change the exact amount 30% would be worth. But even if it's anything close to 3.5 billion, that is a lot of money. Surely far more than all lower league clubs would lose combined if the 3 p.m. blackout was eliminated. In fact, the Premier League could probably greedily suck up the vast majority of that and still easily give an amount of money to lower league clubs in the UK that should more than make up for the possibility of losing some attendance during 3 o'clock games. If we did this, it seems to me win-win. The Fat Cat Premier League clubs get more money, which of course they love. The lower league clubs get more money, or at minimum an equal amount of money to what they would have got with the 3 p.m. blackout, which of course they love. And us fans get to watch our team on TV at 3 p.m. when we can't make it to the stadium. And Christ, would we love that.
Win-win situation for everybody.
Now, I will admit, it's not perfect. Attendances at lower league clubs would drop. And while that would not be financially bad, thanks to this compensation, it might harm the atmosphere at these stadiums and the general excitement at these clubs. However, it's not like all the fans would disappear. It'd only be roughly 1 out of 5 fans, and by definition that 1 out of 5 who was willing to stay in and watch TV instead is clearly not a hardcore fan, and thus I suspect they probably weren't bringing too much to the atmosphere in the first place, probably part of the prawn sandwich brigade. Plus, with this new glut of money, clubs can invest in projects to engage and grow their fan bases moving forward. Things like discounted tickets, open training sessions, better stands and stadiums, etc, etc. And on top of all of this, if something like this ever happened, it would and should surely be initially on a trial basis. So if elimination of the 3 PM blackout in favour of my redistribution idea really doesn't work, or clubs hate it or fans hate it, then I'm sure a vote or something along these lines could be held to end the trial and go back to the blackout with its significant benefits, but significant costs. Thanks for watching Theorising Football. Don't forget to like and subscribe. See you on the next one.